I got these carts from a home that I was recently remodeling, and they were in pretty rough shape. All the furniture was left behind, and I was able to sell most of it, but whatever didn't sell had to be thrown into the burn pile. And these carts were part of the furniture nobody wanted, but I decided to save them. I didn't want to just paint them because they would have looked boring. I wanted to transform them into something that can be better used. Something that was really important for me in this project was to keep it as low cost as possible and to bring them back to life. I started by disassembling the carts, and as you can see, the casters were really rusty. I really like that the carts can move around on wheels, so I decided to get new ones from Amazon. So they come with the hardware to put them in. I tried them earlier. I was hoping that it would just fit on the current thing. I think it's a T-nut, that's what it's called, but it would have been too easy. I gotta try to take that out, which I'm hoping is not too hard to do. Ouch! It's coming out. I gotcha. Okay, here's a close-up so you can see what I'm dealing with. This thing is stuck there. I have been trying to get this out for what seems to be a very long time. But the wood is splitting, so I'm just trying to take it out. I can repair it. Oh wait, there you go, it's out. I can repair it, but I was hoping that I didn't have to. Oh, finally. I noticed the hardware was pretty rusty, so I got new nuts later on. I labeled each part so I knew what belonged together later. So I went back to my shed and I found this piece right here, and I think that's gonna work, so I'm gonna use this as the top. I measured the width and the length of the tabletop, and I cut it to size using a table saw. So, okay, anyways, basically what I'm just trying to show you like my thought process here. So I don't like this because it's open, like it's useless. You can't put anything on there. So it's just, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't like it. So I wanted to make some sort of like, you know, top platform so it's actually usable space. The only solid piece I have is this one, so this is gonna go at the top on one of the carts. Now this one, it's the second shelf. I am going to put these across, and they don't have to. I am going to just put them just kind of apart enough to where it is a shelf, you know, you can put more stuff on there, but it's not as open as that. Ooh. Perfection. This is the general idea. All right, so I decided on the second table, I'm also gonna do the same thing with the strips, and I really like this size. In order for me to get the same size, I'm just gonna clamp that there. I'm gonna put that as a spacer, so to make sure that when I cut it is the same size as the ones I already have. You noticed before the pieces of wood I'm using, they've been sitting out for a while, so they are kind of dirty, they're dusty. I'm using TSP to clean it. If you don't have TSP at home, you can use a degreaser, so just really good cleaner. But obviously like degreaser, quart cutter. Quart cutter is one of my favorite cleaners too. normally, because I'm trying to remove the finish, I will start with 80 grit, but I couldn't find 80 grit, so I'm gonna be starting with 120, and I hope that does the job. The round sander didn't get to the corners, so I used a sanding block. That's to my shoe again. No, 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 no. He wants to get in my shoe. No, it's my shoe. I wipe everything down after sanding it. This is the top piece and the edges are a little bit rough and sharp, so I'm going to sand them to make the edges smoother. I'm also going to sand the top using 220 grit and then check if there's any repairs I need to make. I'm also sanding each individual piece of wood because they're a little rough after I cut them. Now it's time to install the new casters. So I'm gonna be filling up the legs in here so I can re-drill it because this is too small, this is too loose. And I'm gonna be using wood filler high performance, mixing it up with a screwdriver because I don't have a stick here right now. This comes with a little tube of hardener, so you're supposed to mix it. It's kind of, I want to say, kind of maybe like an epoxy. Make sure that this, you know, gets in there pretty good because it goes in there about that deep. I'm sure there is a better way to do this. Like I'm probably doing this in the worst possible way. I stopped by the store and I got a wooden dowel because the wood putty by itself was not working. So I'm going to use it to fill in the holes so I can drill new holes for the casters. So another thing I'm gonna do is fix the crank. So I'm just gonna use wood glue and clamp it. The wood glue did a good job, but I can still feel the crack, so I use wood putty to make it smooth. So the instruction says that this cleans up with acetone, so I got nail polish.
Nail polish remover.
Thank you. Nail polish remover. So I just gotta find a drill that is about that size. I think I'm gonna start with this one. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark the length of this with tape so that way I don't drill in too far. And I've also decided that I'm gonna drill a smaller hole first and then the bigger one. I just don't want to risk cracking it or anything like that, so I'd rather, you know, pre-drill a smaller hole first. So I cracked it pretty good. It also doesn't fit. It is too tight. So I'm gonna have to take it out. Okay, it goes in. It comes right out. Okay. I think I figured it out. I can't have anything else go wrong. Nothing else, please. Nothing else. To prime this, I'm using Vaspar's Bare Wood Primer. I would have preferred to use an oil-based primer or bin primer because they do a better job of sealing up the wood and preventing stains to bleed through. But I already had this primer and I'm trying to do this on a budget, so I'm using what I already have. I found that the easiest way to apply it was using a small foam brush. I missed a spot.
You missed a spot. She was trying to tell you.
Were you? The surface usually feels pretty rough after you prime it, so I'm sanding it with 320 grit. I'm not going with a lower grit because I don't want to sand the primer off, so I'm just lightly sanding it to make the surface smooth. To paint the cards, I'll be using paint I already have. I used this for a previous project, and this is Vaspar Storm Coat. Is exterior paint in a satin finish. Because this exterior paint is gonna be durable paint, so I'm pretty confident that this is gonna be good paint for this project. And it's gonna have a top coat anyway, so it's gonna be protected. I like the color because it's green. It was the color that I was thinking about painting this card because I don't have a lot of paint left in here, and I don't want to keep a big can. I'm gonna pour what I have in here. Ah, I made a mess. To brush the paint, I started with a smooth synthetic brush, but then I realized that this brush didn't work for how small the pieces are, so I switched over to the foam brush. After painting a couple legs with the brushes, I decided to use a foam roller. And this is one of my favorite ways to paint because it leaves a really smooth finish and it makes painting go a lot quicker than painting it with a brush. It also covers a lot better. Here what I'm showing is the comparison of the foam brush versus the roller. So I'm finally ready for the clear coat, and for the clear coat I am using polyacrylic, which is water-based. The instructions recommend that I do 3 coats of this and that I sand in between, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Alright, so here I'm sanding with 400 grit, and it's just a very light sand. The last thing I want is to take the paint off and having to touch it up. Just to give you an example, you see how that, when I sanded it, it scratched off the surface on there. So that was like a little bump that was there. So I'm gonna have to touch that up before I start on the clear coat. I decided not to sand in between clear coats because it seemed like it would easily scratch the paint away. And I didn't want to do multiple touch-ups, so I did 3 coats of polyacrylic without sanding in between. I think sanding in between makes perfect sense if you're doing this over wood, but it does not make sense to do it over a painted surface because the paint comes off really easy when you sand it, even if you're sanding it lightly with a high grit. Before I stained the top, I decided to do a quick sand with 320 grit because I wanted the stain to go on as light as possible.
Say that again?
Before I start staining, I like using a wood conditioner. This prevents the wood from looking blotchy. I have stained before when I don't use this and I don't like how the stain looks. It just looks uneven and blotchy. This prevents that, so I'm gonna use this first. And according to the instructions, I'm supposed to let it sit for 5 to 15 minutes and then I remove the excess away. Okay, we're going to let it sit there for 15 minutes and then we'll be ready to stain after that. When you're using stain, you want to stir it pretty good, especially like scrape the bottom. Sometimes there's gunk that gets like, that just sits at the bottom. So you just want to mix it pretty well. So I stained both sides of the wood, even though the bottom's not really gonna be visible, but I wanted it to all be the same color just because there's going to be a little bit of overhang. But what I wanted to show you is, this is the top sides that I used the wood conditioner, and look how nice and even it looks. And then at the bottom, I just stained it, so I didn't use any wood conditioner. And just look at the difference. So that's what I meant earlier when I was talking about the blotchiness. Just how it just doesn't look even and it almost looks dirty. All the small wood pieces that I cut, I'm doing the same thing. Putting wood conditioner on them and then stain them. I'm applying polyacrylic on the wood knots to make sure that they are sealed. I decided not to repair them or make them smooth because I like the character that it adds to the top. And this shouldn't really be a top that gets a lot of heavy traffic like a dining table, so sealing them should be fine. To attach the small pieces of wood, I used an air compressor stapler. I used a small piece of wood as my spacer in between each piece to make sure that the spacing was exactly the same. Now it's time to reassemble. Now let's take care of those handles, shall we? My plan here is to cut the handle, so I'm taping the surface so I don't ruin the paint. I cut the first handle using a circular saw, but it wasn't as easy as I thought, so to cut the second handle, I used a jigsaw, which was better because I had more control since the circular saw caused me some damage that I had to repair before I finished putting the cart together.
So what is that, like sawdust and peanut butter?
Yes. Never heard of it before? Makes a good wood putty. To permanently secure the top to the cart, I'm drilling holes to put wooden dowels. This is something I've never done before, so it took a lot of pre-measuring to know where I would put the wooden dowels, but it ended up working out. So I drilled the holes on one side here to line up with these.
The pegs, gotcha.
Yep. And hopefully, well, it worked on that side. You see how it dented it? That's where I'm gonna make my hole.
Weren't you just complaining about how people never use sawhorses? They just kind of park on the floor?
Right now is not the time to judge me. Oh my God, I think it lined up. Look at that. Whew. Like a professional. I used wood glue to permanently glue the top, and I let it sit overnight with about 105 clamps to make sure it would stay in place. I already did the first coat of polyacrylic, so I'm now sanding in between, and I repeated the steps to do a third coat. I did 3 coats on the small pieces of wood as well. Since I cut the handles off, I decided to add a pull knob on each side. I'm now working on the top of the second cart, and I'm going to do something completely different because I don't have another wood top. So instead, I want to do a wood pattern, and I'm not really sure that I can pull this off because I've never done this before. It's about right. All right, so I drew the lines here. Basically, that's the middle. So I'm going to cut the edges of all these into 45-degree angles to start putting them on there. Oh. I gotta plug it in, don't I? Woo! Perfect. So yesterday when I started doing this, the wood pieces were moving a lot. So I'm gonna try putting double-sided tape so that way when I put them down, they stay in place, and it helps me measure each piece without the other one moving all over the place. I'm all done putting all the wood pieces, and it's not perfect because the middle didn't quite line up how I wanted it to, but I think it looks good for the most part. I'm using wood glue to glue all the wood pieces in place. I'm about to sand the top, so I'm covering the painted surface with tape so I don't ruin the finish. I'm sanding the edges of the wood first so they don't feel sharp and so they have more of a rounded edge because they don't sit flush with the edges of the cart, but this will help it blend in better. I'm going to fill in all the seams with wood putty since this can be used as a surface where you can put drinks and I don't want any moisture or liquids to seep through.
Yo, what's this? Where am I? Bro, this looks so cool. I could hang here forever.
After the wood putty dried, I sanded it with 220 grit. I noticed some tiny spot I missed with the wood putty, so I used wood glue to fill them up. It came out better than I thought. I honestly was not sure if I was gonna pull this off. So just like I did with the last table, I'm doing a pre-stain, and then that way the stain doesn't look blotchy and it comes all even. And I'm gonna do the same color stain that I did on the last one. Unfortunately, the wood putty did not blend in well. It was a different color than the stain, so in the future, I might just buy some wood putty that is already stained closer to the color that I need. Why does every step has to be so tedious? I'm gonna need a razor knife. Just like the last top, I did 3 coats of polyacrylic, sanding in between each coat. Before I show you the final shots, I want to go over what it costs to do this project. I already have most of the materials because I have leftover paints from other projects, and I like buying Oops paint from Lowe's or Home Depot at a discount. I also had a lot of scrap wood, so I didn't really spend a lot. What I spent the most money on was the casters. They were $30 for both sets. I bought the wood to make the wood patterns, and that was $10. The rollers and the brush was $20. The wooden dowels and the nuts, that was only a couple dollars. So I came out of these projects for both carts for $64 out of pocket. And this is how they turned out. Let me know in the comments which card you like the best. And if you like this type of video, consider subscribing. I have more DIY projects I'm working on, and I'll be making more videos.